Patrick Mahomes reclaims his throne on top of the NFL world while quarterback battles are underway in Minnesota and Cleveland. Plus, we're breaking down the top wide receivers in the NFL leading up to the debut of the Grey Duck 250 on the Grey Duck NFL Show. Hello and welcome to the Grey Duck NFL Show. I'm your host, Josh Kolojeski, and we are a part of the Grey Duck Sports Network. Go ahead and give us a follow, like, or subscribe over on our Twitter. That is at Grey Duck Sports. We're also on YouTube at Grey Duck Sports and on TikTok at grey.duck.sports. We've got plenty of content on all three platforms, and you can go ahead and see what we've got for you. Today on the Grey Duck NFL Show, we've got a lot planned. All the news from the past couple of days, including a Patrick Mahomes super extension that makes him once again the highest paid player in the NFL. After the news, we're going to start our countdown towards the Grey Duck 250, our rankings of the top 250 players heading into the 2026 NFL season. Today, we're going to break down the wide receiver position as we open up all position groups moving forward every Thursday on the Grey Duck NFL Show. So, let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it, and let's start talking about this Patrick Mahomes extension. Now, according to Adam Schefter, this is added on to the deal that he originally signed, the 10-year contract in 2020, that at that time made him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Obviously, some things have happened with other quarterbacks getting bigger deals as the salary cap continues to go up and up and up. But now, Patrick Mahomes back on top of the NFL financial world as he adds 2 years to his deal, which will keep him in Kansas City through the end of the 2033 season at the very least. And according to Adam Schefter, the new money is going to be $239 million. So quite the pay raise for Mahomes, whose annual average salary is going to spike up by more than $17 million per year. His total deal, when all is said and done, is going to be worth $500 million. Yes, you heard that right, $500 million. The first ever NFL player to have a deal that will total $500 million. $504.75 million to be exact, and it has escalators that can bring it up to as much as $522 million. Schefter says that all of this money can be guaranteed through different contract metrics, and all of it already is guaranteed at least through the next 4 seasons. It also makes him the top paid quarterback by annual average salary, $64 million per year. That surpasses Dak Prescott, who is at about $60 million per year. So, a lot of money, a lot of contract language to still be at least worked through or maybe even released, as we're still not sure all of the guarantees, all of the signing bonuses, all of the salary cap offsets, and all the like. I'm sure, as has been Brett Veach's go-to during the Mahomes era, there is plenty of room to wiggle for salary cap purposes placed throughout the course of this deal. So even if it's a $64 million salary 1 year, it is not a $64 million cap hit, and that keeps the Chiefs with the flexibility to go get free agents and continue to build their team around Patrick Mahomes. And that is what they have done in the past, is every single offseason they restructure it, but it's basically a planned restructure. Patrick Mahomes is still getting all of his money. Some of it's just being upfronted, and some of it is being backloaded. And obviously well-deserved. I don't think there are many people that would disagree that Patrick Mahomes is a top 3 quarterback, if not the number 1 quarterback. I think you can make the argument for both Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. For me personally, I still have Patrick Mahomes at the top spot in the NFL among all quarterbacks. And now the contract, deservedly so, matches up with that. It obviously is a lot of money, and it is maybe a risk for a quarterback who's coming off a torn ACL. But I think if you're a Chiefs fan, this gives you some confidence that, or a lot of confidence, I would say, that the organization does not view this to be an injury that will affect much of the long-term ability of the star franchise quarterback in Kansas City. And that I don't know if that necessarily means he'll be ready right away for 2026, but I think we are headed towards that point, that he is likely going to be able to start week 1 of the 2026 season, barring any setbacks between now and September. But at the very least, we know that, I mean, as most ACL injuries now, the recovery, there's typically no long-term lasting effects. It seems like that will be the case with Patrick Mahomes as well, or else I doubt that they would be willing to give him such a big contract despite him being such a great quarterback. So he's going to be in Kansas City tormenting the AFC West and really the rest of the NFL through the 2033 season. They're probably still going to have some cap flexibility, so whenever it is they need to retool the offensive line or find wide receivers, they should be able to do that a little bit. But now the question is, what constitutes the success of this deal moving forward? Has the overall deal, which has started in 2020 with now the 3 Super Bowls since that point for Kansas, or the 2 Super Bowls since that point for Kansas City, 3 Super Bowls overall for Kansas City under the Patrick Mahomes era, has that already made this deal a success no matter what, even if he doesn't win another Super Bowl throughout the remainder of this contract? Or with the new 2 years and $239 million being added on to this deal, what do you think Patrick Mahomes needs to do in order to, in your mind, qualify that as worth it? And I mean, for me, it's hard to argue with anyone that 3 Super Bowls at this point would render a contract an overpay. But obviously, you could just put those 3 Super Bowl wins in the bank and make a financial move that doesn't tie you down to Patrick Mahomes throughout the rest of his career and doesn't add the 2 years, $239 million. There's a world where you don't do that and you still have those 3 Super Bowls already banked. So do those Super Bowl wins need to come in that 2-year window? Or does 1 Super Bowl win between now and 2033 do the job for you and guarantee that despite the $500 million price tag, this deal is a success? I think for me, at the cost of $239 million extra dollars, I think the other remaining quick math, $260 million, I think that has been well spent for the 3 Super Bowls. Well, I guess the 2 Super Bowls up to this point. So if we go with that same math, because the 2019 Super Bowl, he has 3 total Super Bowls, but the 2019-2020 Super Bowl was before this contract extension. So if we say that those 2 Super Bowl wins were good enough for the first $260 million of this deal, I would say he needs 2 Super Bowls between now and 2033 in order to fulfill and live up to the price tag of the final $240 million of this deal. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in the final 2 years of the contract, but I think you need to win 2 more Super Bowls if you're Patrick Mahomes to make this deal completely worth it the rest of the way throughout the rest of his Chiefs tenure. And that would put him as second most Super Bowl wins all time, behind just only Tom Brady. Nobody else has won more than 4 outside of Tom Brady. Patrick Mahomes, if he gets the 2 more, he would be at 5 and would become just the second quarterback to hit that number. So in order for this deal to be successful, or at least the extension that we had in June of 2026 to be successful, 2 more Super Bowls need to be won by the Kansas City Chiefs. Can they do that is the next question. I'm never going to want to doubt that Patrick Mahomes can win 2 more Super Bowls. We saw him win 2 Super Bowls in the span of 2 years, so it is not out of the realm of possibility. But I think if you are saying, is it more probable that he will win 2 Super Bowls than more probable than not, then I would say no. I would say it's more likely that he doesn't win 2 more Super Bowls just by going through the law of averages. And it's also going to be a Kansas City Chiefs team that I think we are starting to see more holes mount. And even with the restructures of the Mahomes deal, we are not finding enough pieces of cork to plug those holes in order to be a year in, year out Super Bowl favorite. I think they're always going to be a Super Bowl contender as long as Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback. But I think they are starting to slowly erode a bit so that they are not going to be the Super Bowl favorite year in, year out. Now, if the Chiefs, hadn't made it to the AFC Championship game last year, if Mahomes doesn't get injured, they make it to the playoffs, maybe they win in the wild card, they win the divisional round, then I think you're putting their odds to win the Super Bowl about even to what the LA Rams are right now. That's not the case right now because what's fresh in our mind is a Chiefs team that missed the playoffs for the first time since I think 2014. So I think had things gone a little bit differently, had Patrick Mahomes not gotten injured at the end of the year and the Chiefs make a run to the playoffs where we know Patrick Mahomes works his magic to get the job done more often than not, then I think that changes how we view the Rams heading into this 2026 season, while in reality, there is no real material change in this team, and there should not be any material change in our expectations as long as Patrick Mahomes is healthy and ready to go in Week 1, which, as of right now, all signs and tea leaves are pointing to that being the case. But again, being one of the favorites for the Super Bowl still only gives you what? At best a 10% chance to win the Super Bowl. So if we're talking about the next 7 years, a 10% chance each and every year at best. And that's assuming that no further erosion comes or the erosion of the roster is quickly filled up with better draft picks and smart signings and Moneyball-like moves by the Chiefs front office. I think if we assume that through the 7 years, that's a 10% chance to win the Super Bowl every year, I think the math would still tell us that's going to be less than the 2 that we have now decided is necessary in order to make these final 7-8 seasons pay off. However, I think some relief is coming in 2030, as it has kind of been known that the salary cap is going to perhaps almost double by 2030, and that would give the Chiefs and every other team a lot more cap room, but it would also lower the overall percentage of the salary cap that is being spent on Patrick Mahomes. And then come 2030, I think that's when you're going to see the most aggressive run of this Chiefs team to find whatever top-tier wide receivers. I mean, at that point, it's going to be like a Tet McMillan hitting free agency after his rookie deal if he's not extended, or an Emeka Egbuka. Guys from this 2025, 2026, 2024 drafts are going to start to hit free agency at that point, and the Chiefs, I think, are going to be all over them so that they can make the final half, assumedly, of Patrick Mahomes' career and the contract extension that he's being paid for the final half of his career to make that all completely worthwhile. I think you hit the rubber hard in 2030, and if the 2 Super Bowl wins, if they were to happen, come before that point, then you're just rolling with cash for money the rest of the way, and then we're having an even bigger conversation as to how does Patrick Mahomes truly rank against Tom Brady, because now we're talking about flirting with the 6th, 7th, and maybe even one day 8th Super Bowl title. All of that is well off into the future. But all that to say, I think it needs to be the 2 Super Bowl wins, and the Chiefs have to do everything in their power between now and then to get Patrick Mahomes those 2 Super Bowl wins. Another guy that is getting an extension in a much less successful environment, to put it politely, is Miami Dolphins center Aaron Brewer. And according to Adam Schefter, the extension for Aaron Brewer is going to be a 3-year deal worth $52.5 million. $37 million of that is going to be guaranteed. This is a significant pay raise for Brewer as well, who is due, at least in salary, to make just $1.5 million this year. So some excellent play this past season by Brewer is being paid off by the new front office of the Miami Dolphins. And, I am starting to feel a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more confident if I am a Miami Dolphins fan, not necessarily for the 2026 season, and perhaps not even throughout the length of this extension for Aaron Brewer, who I would say is probably the best center in the game, and he's going to be paid as the 3rd highest. So if in terms of average annual value, but behind just Creed Humphrey and Tyler Linderbaum, who, of course, set a brand new tier of contracts for centers during this past free agency. So I think you're getting value there. And I think it shows that even in times of full rebuild, which, fair to say, I think that the Miami Dolphins are going through in this 2026-2027 season, this front office is not going to be afraid to pay the top players that they think can be there at the end of the rebuild. And I think that's important because a lot of times in these teardowns, you can completely ostracize your fan base if you get rid of parts that have been so integral to their enjoyment of the team in the recent years. And by keeping Aaron Brewer, who obviously is not a sexy name for the Dolphins, but is a big part of any success they've had on offense, and obviously by the extension that Devon Achane signed earlier this month, by keeping those guys around, you are already filling in some parts of the competitive version of the Miami Dolphins in maybe 2028. And in the meantime, giving fans reasons to turn in and watch this team. I think it can still be an entertaining Dolphins team with Malik Willis at quarterback, Devon Achane, and now at least one elite offensive lineman locked down, and we can maybe say that Patrick Paul, Jonas Avenea, all of those guys, I mean, even Austin Jackson, you could say that they can form a competent offensive line to give Dolphins fans at least a reason to watch this offense, even if everything around it is going to be probably much less satisfactory. So I have confidence in this Dolphins regime, which came over from Green Bay and had the kind of they were known for being a little bit cheaper, not going out and getting guys as much, but also locking down their own free agents. And I think you're seeing a more aggressive Miami Dolphins, that they're being more aggressive with a team like the Miami Dolphins and the advantages that a Miami market would have over a market in the middle of a mid-sized city in Wisconsin. So the Dolphins are locking up the few strengths that they currently have on the roster, and that is obviously some good news for this team moving forward and great news for these fans. And come 2028, you already have some pieces in place, and obviously in 2027 and 2028, in those free agency years and those draft years, you're going to be doing your best to continue to fill in those holes. But now you have more and more these holes start to get filled. You already have the running back and center of the future on your team because they are also the running back and center of the present. Moving on in our news segment, Alaric Jackson. Not some great news for him. While other players are getting paid, Alaric Jackson could be facing a suspension after he was arrested for felony domestic violence, reported by his girlfriend, his live-in girlfriend, in Southern California. A report came in on Monday night, I believe, or early Monday morning. It was either Sunday into Monday or Monday into Tuesday. But the report came in, and he was arrested, and a judge immediately must have seen that there was some credence to the accusations made against him, which we'll talk about in just a second, because the judge granted a restraining order by the girlfriend against Alaric Jackson, which forces Jackson not only to stay 100 yards away from the girlfriend, but also he must move out of the home that they shared, at least for right now. And I would say, I guess I don't want to say that gives the accusations like credence automatically, but I think you're not going to get a restraining order if you could not show the judge that there was some reason for that restraining order to be put into place. And what the allegations are is that there are scratches and bruises on the girlfriend because of an argument that became physical when Jackson and his girlfriend were fighting over possession for a phone. And during the argument, the girlfriend said that, allegedly, that she is pregnant. And according to her, Alaric Jackson said, I don't give a damn, and continued this alleged assault. If that is the case, then we don't need to see Alaric Jackson in the NFL ever again, if it is to be proven true. And I'm always going to, I think, lean on the side of, trusting the victim, especially when there is a restraining order in the case, and especially when we're dealing with a player who already has been suspended for violating the NFL personal conduct policy. You might remember that Jackson was suspended at the start of the 2024 season. At the time, the NFL just released that it was because he violated the personal conduct policy. Later reporting revealed that an NFL investigation had found that he took video of a woman during sexual intercourse, and that video was made without that woman's consent. And so that was a violation of the personal conduct policy and would be a 2-game suspension and in 2024. Now that this would potentially be his second offense, Sports Illustrated is reporting that a suspension could be anywhere from 6 to 8 games, putting a key part of this Rams offensive line out until the middle of the season, a season in which the Rams have such high aspirations and have seemingly gone all in for a Super Bowl run. So you would be without your left tackle for the first half of that Super Bowl run. Your quarterback, who is older and was dealing with a potential back injury coming into last season, would be less protected, and that would open you up to higher chance of him getting hit and a higher chance then of him being injured. And again, not like an astronomical chance, probably still overall a small chance of any of that happening, but now opening that window for risk. But more importantly, off the football field is the more significant portion of this equation, because the NFL is, as we'll see even in a further story, is a league that has not taken domestic violence seriously, that has not taken sexual exploitation seriously, that gave Ben Roethlisberger just a 4-game suspension and continued to lift him up on pedestals throughout the rest of his career, despite fairly credible accusations of rape against him. NFL that had washed its hands of a Ray Rice situation before a video showing the complete atrocity of Ray Rice's actions was made public. It is an NFL that wants to protect its players despite their vices, no matter what. An NFL who, with the Green Bay Packers in the recent Josh Jacobs situation, in domestic violence allegation that was made not only by the victim or the purported victim of that domestic violence, but also by a neighbor who overheard and saw the effects of the alleged domestic violence and was a witness to all of that. We have that player already now in minicamp, and Matt LaFleur talking to the media saying that, it's just business as usual, despite having this guy that more likely than not, the facts are pointing to, left some significant bruising on a woman. It is an NFL that is not taking domestic violence seriously, and the league needs to step up. Roger Goodell needs to step up. The owners, while they have their monthly meetings, or maybe we should call them their monthly vacations at whatever the new hot spot is, where they're, basking in their riches, basking in their fame, maybe instead of altering some rules about draft picks 5 years out and debating that, maybe we should have a stricter domestic violence and personal conduct policy so that when things like Alaric Jackson happen, it's not a slap on the wrist the first time and then a half season suspension the second time, but the punishments are much more endangering to that NFL player's career, and that a second instance could be a year or a 2-year long suspension. Let's not forget Deshaun Watson's suspension was 11 games despite dozens of women independently coming forward and revealing the sexual assault that Deshaun Watson had done towards them, or at the very least sexual harassment in some of those cases. This NFL personal conduct policy needs a serious overhaul, and right now the owners and Roger Goodell and the NFLPA do not care about that, because their first and foremost priority is the product that is being played on the field. And if you are starting to suspend guys like Josh Jacobs and Alaric Jackson, that makes the overall product become less. And that is a despicable way of thinking. And it is kind of the epitome. It symbolizes perfectly a lot of the faults and problems that current day America is dealing with. It is a perfect parallel to that. Money is above all else. Money is above moral and virtue and doing the right thing. That is the case in America, and that is now we see the case in the NFL. They need to throw the book at Alaric Jackson, and it will be despicable if they do not. And if they are limited in this case to just suspending him the full 8 games, fine, but get your asses into the next owners meeting and rework this personal conduct policy, because continued abuses by these players and them continuing to get slapped on the wrist shows us that you are not taking allegations of domestic violence seriously. On to a lighter note. Quarterback battles in minicamp are underway, and 2 more than any other. One is with the wretched person known as Deshaun Watson going up against Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland. For whatever reason, Deshaun Watson is still very much a member of this Cleveland Browns teams, despite poor performance, despite injury, despite credible sexual assault allegations levied against him. He is still fighting for the quarterback 1 job against Shedeur Sanders. Now, some of the reports are that Watson is getting rid of the ball quicker. Who cares? It should just be Shedeur Sanders. Watson should not be a player in the NFL. Shame on Cleveland. Shame on Todd Monken for even making this a competition. Shame on the owners of the Pilot gas stations who also own the Cleveland Browns or the Flying Jays or whatever else, shitty truck stop. Shame on them for continuing to string us on this Deshaun Watson path and not making us just completely forget about him. Hopefully, Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, Taylor Green, anyone is a better option for me for the Cleveland Browns, because I don't care about the football aspect of it, than Deshaun Watson. So go Sanders, go Gabriel, go Taylor Green, go whoever else is currently in camp for Cleveland in that quarterback battle. And the other quarterback battle is in Minnesota, and that is J.J. McCarthy and Kyler Murray. And last week, it seemed like Kyler Murray was the front runner in that, and at least was winning the PR media battle with some of the comments that were made by him. Pretty neutral when asked about the quarterback competition compared to J.J. McCarthy, who seemed a bit more petty. That was last week. This week, the switch has kind of flipped, where reports are that Kyler Murray is not looking as good, and J.J. McCarthy is making a lot of excellent throws. So it seems like this is, in fact, a legitimate battle. And despite the persistence by many national media prognosticators, not necessarily reporters, but guys trying to read the tea leaves like me, they would tell you that this is a fake competition. But then I would say, why are you splitting reps and preventing the heir apparent quarterback for this team, Kyler Murray, from fully immersing himself in the offense? And that's what Murray's comments pointed to earlier in this week, where Murray said that he feels like he would have a much better his learning of the offense and his performance would be much better if he had more reps. And if you are Kevin O'Connell and hearing that, and in fact was making this quarterback competition a sham and heavily weighed towards Kyler Murray in the first place, that to me would be a sign that, okay, we need to basically just call this competition early. In this scenario, it's not actually a competition, but call this farce of a competition early and give it to Kyler Murray so that he can take all the reps throughout the rest of minicamp. He can prepare as the starter going into training camp, yada, 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 if it was a fake competition. But the fact that that is not what's happening at this moment, still, despite the calls by Kyler Murray to give himself more reps, shows me that this is, in fact, a legitimate quarterback competition. And if it's not, then Kevin O'Connell is making a huge mistake by severely hindering the guy that he would have already chosen as quarterback and his progression through this offense and his ability to learn it and be ready by the start of the regular season. Now, this could all change. Maybe training camp, it is just Kyler Murray taking the reps, but we're in mandatory minicamp now where all players are there or else are subject to a fine, and both McCarthy and Murray are splitting first team reps. And it looks like Murray still has the advantage here, but McCarthy could be closing that gap. And then also J.J. McCarthy making some comments that he loves this organization. He loves the Vikings. This is where he wanted to be before he was even drafted by the team. And he did, in fact, make that known before he was drafted by the team, that this is one of the places that he would want to be. And he wouldn't change anything so far of his career just yet. So we are seeing both of these guys go head to head. And I think McCarthy is gaining some steam on Kyler Murray. And remember, McCarthy looked really good at the end of this season. I think there will be people that tell you that he was trash throughout the course of the year, and that was true until the last 4 games of the season, where in 3 of those 4 games he put up a better EPA per play than Drake May did in any of his games during his rookie season. And during Drake May's rookie season, there were lows and there were highs, but the highs gave us confidence that he would still be a very good quarterback moving forward, and that ended up being the case. J.J. McCarthy has had highs and lows, and his highs on a results base were higher than those of Drake May in 2024. So I think we're talking out of both sides of our mouth if we're saying that Drake May's progression was legitimate in 2024 into 2025, and then saying that J.J. McCarthy's cannot be legitimate going from 2025 into 2026. Doesn't mean it will be, doesn't mean that trend will continue, but I think it is unfair to completely write that off. And I think this battle between McCarthy and Murray will go much deeper into training camp than a lot of people believe. Moving on, Joel Bitonio is retiring from the NFL. 7 Pro Bowlers in his 12 years, 5 All-Pro selections. He is a guard that spent his entire career in Cleveland, was bound to be a free agent, one of the 5 starting Cleveland offensive linemen from 2025 that are no longer on the team in 2026. They had to do a basic whole line change on their offensive line, and did so through free agency and through the draft. But Joel Bitonio, who was still a free agent, will not be returning not only to the Browns, obviously, but to the NFL at all. The question is, as it is with anyone who retires, is Joel Bitonio a Hall of Famer? And if you play 12 seasons and are named an All-Pro in 5 of those 12 seasons, I think you've got a fairly good case of that. And I don't think for most of the NFL world, Joel Bitonio is necessarily a household name. I think for most NFL fans that are more than just casual observers on a Sunday and are spending a little bit of time, looking at rosters, even if it's a minimal amount of time, I think there is at least knowledge of Joel Bitonio, but I don't think most would have assumed that he was as good as his career accolades indicate. And that might hurt his Hall of Fame chances, but if his accolades of 5 All-Pros are to be believed, which obviously they are, because we have it in bold print, those are the accolades of somebody who I would say deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Is Joel Bitonio a Hall of Famer? Is the 5 All-Pros enough? Or does being kind of lost in the mire of Cleveland and not quite being at the level of, say, a Joe Thomas to raise himself out of the mire in Cleveland, does that make him not a Hall of Famer in your mind? Other quick notes, Alec Pierce, his injury, his surgery that he had in March, is supposed to keep him out 4 to 6 months. It looks like we're trending toward the later of that 4 to 6 months, and he probably will not be back until late into training camp, is what the most recent report is. Colts knew about this when they signed him to the 4-year, $110 million extension, but obviously missing reps with Daniel Jones when you are supposed to be the number 1 wide receiver, because they traded away Michael Pittman. Obviously last year also traded away A.D. Mitchell and kind of thinned out a wide receiver room that was decently strong heading into the 2025 season. If Alec Pierce needs more time to ramp up, even if he returns at the end of training camp and is starting to take reps in training camp and maybe even getting some play in one of the preseason games, I think even if that happens, you can't just fully expect him to be all the way up to speed by the time the 2026 opener is there. And we're still not sure who's going to be starting for the Colts week 1. If Daniel Jones will have his Achilles be healed enough to start week 1. If not, then is it Anthony Richardson? Is Anthony Richardson even on the team? Is it Riley Leonard? Does Phillip Rivers make another cameo appearance? I doubt that one, but I would have doubted that if you had told me Phillip Rivers was going to come back to the NFL last year. I would have also doubted that. So I'm not putting anything off the table outside of those quarterbacks like Johnny Unitas who are no longer with us. Is Johnny Unitas no longer with us? I guess I don't know, and I should not speak. If he is still with us, I apologize, Johnny Unitas. I don't know why I would assume that, but I will just recuse myself from that statement. I will backtrack, retract it, and we'll just pretend that that didn't happen. But getting chemistry, if it is going to be Anthony Richardson or recovering Daniel Jones or Riley Leonard, it's going to be difficult for Pierce to get on the same page as those guys right away. Now, I know for Alec Pierce, typically the same page is just throw it up to me downfield twice a game and I'll make 2 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. But if you want him to progress and live fully up to the extension that he signed, then I think you want him to evolve his game as a wide receiver. Obviously, that hurts, or that becomes less of a chance, at least in this first season, because of this injury and because the lack of ramp-up time that he will have before the season begins. And now what does that mean for the Colts offense? We are already, there's already plenty of questions around whether Daniel Jones' play last year at its peak was sustainable. And without Alec Pierce, that is obviously going to just make those questions come to the forefront even more until his return. And then also another idiot, Brandon Ayuk. We've had Alaric Jackson, the idiot, Deshaun Watson, the idiot, and now Brandon Ayuk, the idiot. Although much less of a malcontent than the other two, at least so far that we know of. He goes and says that the 49ers are stupid for paying him $50 million. He might have just gotten himself out of the NFL for a long time with those comments, because if you are telling someone, I tricked you, I pulled the rug on you, I got you to give me $50 million and I didn't have to do a single thing, and I'm still going to get some money in 2027, I'm going to have a hard time as a roster builder, unless it is a fully non-guaranteed contract. I'm going to have a hard time signing you to that sort of deal. So I don't know what Ayuk is hoping to accomplish right there, but that is some, late stage Antonio Brown sort of behavior. In terms of the comments that he's making, I think you are, if you're going to be cut, making yourself much less desirable for any other team. And maybe that is what Ayuk wants, because I think it's no secret that he wants to go to ASU and go to Washington and team up with his old ASU teammate Jaden Daniels. I think that is what he wants, and maybe by doing this, he completely, turns every other GM off to a potential trade that the 49ers are looking for, while also simultaneously trying to make the 49ers look like fools for still having him on the roster because of those comments, and then making it so the only team that desires him is Washington and Jaden Daniels, and then he and Jaden Daniels can be happy and I guess try to make the playoffs. But as of right now, I would be hard pressed to find Brandon Ayuk getting significant snaps with any team in 2026 unless he finds a way to walk back, apologize for those comments, and show that that apology is genuine. Because if there is one thing that especially NFL owners will take personally against you, it is messing with their money. And if you are laughing at an NFL owner for giving you $50 million, that is going to prick the ears of the other 31 NFL owners and make them, or I guess 30 since, the Packers, yada, yada, and their whole Ponzi scheme there. It will make those other 30 owners, I guess, less likely to want to give you money moving forward, even a minimal amount of money. That is your news, so we are going to quickly transition over and talk about the Grey Duck 250. Now, throughout the next few weeks, or I think 11, 12 weeks leading up to the regular season, we are going to break down position by position the top players at every position. And when all is said and done, we are going to create a list of what I'm going to call the Grey Duck 250, the inaugural Grey Duck 250. And that will be the list of my top 250 players heading into the 2026 regular season. And these are the players that I think it's a mix of the impact that they have had in their most recent seasons, 2025, 2024, and maybe even to an extent 2023, and how I think that will carry over into 2026. Obviously, it's going to make it difficult to find some of these out of nowhere breakout stars, but we're going to do our best to make a full, competent, comprehensive list of my top 250 players in the league on the Grey Duck NFL show. So every Thursday, we're going to do a new position, and today we are walking through the wide receivers. Let's get started. I'm going to rank the top 32 at every position. And for wide receivers, we're going to start from the very bottom. Number 32, I'm coming in with Calvin Ridley of the Tennessee Titans. He is a player that I thought when he was with Jacksonville in 2024 had a really good season and just never got on the same page in Tennessee with Cam Ward that first year. I think now that Calvin Ridley does not have to be the main target because of Carnell Tate coming in, I think that is going to take some of the defensive eyes off Calvin Ridley and make a guy who's, a pretty decent route runner, make him have a bounce back year in the Titans offense that I think is going to be much improved. And I think Calvin Ridley is going to bounce back. He's going to be my number 32. Moving on to number 31, I am starting to buy into some of Matt LaFleur's words in Arizona and his faith and confidence in Marvin Harrison Jr. I have less faith in the quarterbacks that will be throwing to Marvin Harrison Jr., whether that be a disgruntled Jacoby Brissett, an old rookie Carson Beck, or a gunslinger like Gardner Minshew. I would have more faith in the numbers being super, super high for Marvin Harrison Jr. if Gardner Minshew was the guy throwing to him, because he just seems to really have no fear in where he throws the ball and who he throws it to. But I think Marvin Harrison Jr. in this third year takes a leap forward, works on his hands. He's already a good route runner and is utilized more than just far outside on the sideline like he is a wide receiver decoy for the Tennessee Volunteers. So that is why Marvin Harrison Jr. is number 31. Number 30 is Jordan Addison of the Minnesota Vikings, their number 2 wide receiver. And he is a player that statistically took a step back last season. Part of that was due to some inconsistent, bumpy, rocky, whatever you want to call it, quarterback play. And also the suspension at the beginning of this season. But he is a guy in 2023 and 2024 has proven himself to be a big play wide receiver. And I think he finally takes another step forward for him and gets above the 1,000 yard mark. I mean, he's a guy, despite not going over 1,000 yards in his career just yet, has a 10 touchdown season, has a 9 touchdown season. So he is a big play sort of guy. And now, whether it be Kyler Murray or a hopefully improved J.J. McCarthy throwing him the football, and with even less eyes on him, he already had less eyes on him because of Justin Jefferson and T.J. Hawkinson, and now even less so now with Juwan Jennings. I think that will open up the field a little bit more for a route runner as good as Jordan Addison. Number 29, Emeka Egbuka of your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Egbuka got off to a fast start early in his rookie campaign, was relied upon a lot to be the top receiver with injuries to Godwin, with injuries to Mike Evans, and then took a step back as the season wore on and teams found ways to kind of cover him a little bit more. Even though he's going to be that number 1 now without Mike Evans, with Chris Godwin still recovering from injuries, it's Emeka Egbuka's wide receiver room to control. I think the adjustments will be made. I think obviously, a healthy Jalen McMillan and a rookie Ted Hurst could help build the overall structure of that offense and give Egbuka more open opportunities because of the attention that teams might have to pay to those guys, and allow Egbuka to work his game as a possession receiver a little bit more if deeper parts of the field are being occupied by a speedster like McMillan or a big-bodied speedster like Ted Hurst. Number 28, Zay Flowers is going to be there, the 2023 first rounder for the Baltimore Ravens. He's still wide receiver 1 for Baltimore, and they've continued. They've always looked for different ways to get him the football, and they are going to continue to do so. So I think what we've seen from him the past 3 seasons, and obviously took an even bigger step in 2025. But I think that is going to be about what we see from him in 2026. I don't see him getting outstandingly better. I don't see him falling off to any extent. I think it's going to be about at the same level of play, and that is around the 28th best receiver in the league. Then for number 27, we're going to go with Terry McLaurin of the Washington Commanders. McLaurin, getting older a little bit, an Ohio State product, much like Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka already on this list. But I have a lot of faith in the chemistry that McLaurin built with Jaden Daniels in 2024. I think we see a better Washington Commanders offense this year. I think Jaden Daniels, hopefully stays healthy and they pick up with that chemistry, and McLaurin can have another renaissance year like he did in 2024. Number 26, a player that I am hoping, or not hoping because this is on a rival team of mine, but that I think is going to make some significant strides if he stays healthy, significant strides, I should say. Rome Odunze of the Chicago Bears. I think he's going to be the number one option for Caleb Williams in this Ben Johnson offense. I think Luther Burton is going to get a lot of looks. I think Colston Loveland is one of the best tight ends in the league, and Cole Kmet is still there as well and is a very good tight end. But I think Rome Odunze, if Chicago can, is going to try to feature him as the top receiver, and a top 10 pick from 2024 will kind of put together, much like Marvin Harrison Jr., his best season in his third season. Number 25, another Ohio State receiver, Carnell Tate, the rookie for the Tennessee Titans. I think he's going to be the number one option. I think he is going to be a favorite outlet of Cam Ward in 2026. And he's just effective. He is a big-bodied receiver. He doesn't have the best speed. He's a good, nuanced route runner that stems his routes pretty well and kind of gets defenders leaning one way because of that stem, and then is able to quickly enough cut it back to where the route is supposed to go. I like what Carnell Tate provides for the Tennessee Titans offense, and he's going to be my number 25 wide receiver moving forward. Number 24, Ladd McConkey, obviously took a step back in his second year, but we saw the type of player that he could be with Justin Herbert in his first year back in 2024. I think he's going to get a lot of targets once again. I think he is, going to a lot of times in a 22-13 personnel set, he's going to be the lone wide receiver on the field. And he's able to attack at all sorts of different levels. And I think he will get the opportunity to do that. He's not just an underneath Wes Welker type. Despite the lack of melanin on his skin, he is not just Wes Welker, Julian Edelman. He is able to get to different levels of the field and isn't just this shifty underneath wide receiver, 110 catches, 905 yards, with 2 touchdowns sort of guy. I think he's better than that. I think he's a couple steps above that. And I think he returns to his 2024 form. Another player I think that is going to return to his 2024 form is Brian Thomas Jr. At this point, I would also like to say that I did not really consider Brandon Ayuk because I don't know, because of my belief that I don't think he'll be playing significantly anywhere in 2026. In order to be significantly enough, at least, to be on this top 32 list. I decided to omit Tyreek Hill, who might have made the top 32. I'm not completely sure because of the injury. There's a lot of speculation that he might not return at all in 2026, and it might be 2027 as his soonest. And even if he returns in 2026, it might be halfway through the season, and he might not be able to have as big of an impact as some of the other guys on this list if given a fully healthy season. And then I also took off Travis Hunter, who I really like and probably would have been higher than his statistical output last year showed as a wide receiver. But because they say he's going to be more of a cornerback and get limited looks at wide receiver, I decided not to place him here, but I did place his teammate Brian Thomas. And I think Brian Thomas Jr. has finally found his spot in this offense with Liam Cohen, with Trevor Lawrence. And now with teams knowing they have to pay extra underneath attention to both Jacoby Myers and Parker Washington, Brian Thomas Jr. is going to get a lot of those intermediate, deep areas of the field that made him so impressive with Lawrence and Mac Jones during the 2024 season as a lone bright spot for that Jaguars team. Number 22, Mike Evans, the ageless wonder out in San Francisco. I think Brock Purdy is a guy who tries to cash a lot of checks that you would think his arm can't clear. And I think Mike Evans will make it more likely that those checks do clear. And I think Brock Purdy knows that and will target him on some of those cash checked throws that he likes to make. And I think that's going to lead to a lot of big plays, or at least, similar to what we've seen from Mike Evans so far, always steady, a lot of those sorts of plays, although he has been dealing with injuries in each of the last two seasons. Number 21, DK Metcalf of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Speed, size, athleticism are all there with DK Metcalf. He runs just about 3 or 4 routes, but he has everything else and is still able to make it work. So I still like what he provides for an offense, as long as Aaron Rodgers doesn't ice him out like it seemed like he was doing at the end of last season. I also have a hunch that we might see a guy like Drew Aller later on in the year if Mike McCarthy my personal thought is that Mike McCarthy, who, if you don't remember Aaron Rodgers coming out of college, his mechanics were leaving a lot to be desired. I don't want to say they were completely atrocious like Drew Aller's currently are, but they weren't great. And Mike McCarthy, once he came over in 2026, spent a lot of 2026 and 2027, those training camps, really working on the mechanics, the footwork, and just the overall biomechanics of Aaron Rodgers to become a solid passer. And that allowed him to be one of the best mechanically gifted quarterbacks in NFL history. And we see Drew Aller has the arm talent. I think that is what Mike McCarthy thinks he can do with Drew Aller. He thinks he can work that magic again. And I think he will like to see it if Pittsburgh does not have a playoff spot or is out of the playoff race in the last third of the season, and we could see a little bit more Drew Aller, and that could mean a lot more DK Metcalf targets, even if Aaron Rodgers is icing him out a little bit more early on in the season. Number 20, Jalen Waddle of the Denver Broncos, a trade during this offseason, got him from Miami to Denver, and Bo Nix loves first reads, and Jalen Waddle can be an underneath first read for a lot of these plays. Sean Payton loves screens. Jalen Waddle can be a screen for a lot of these. And Bo Nix also likes to get aggressive and throw the deep ball. And Jalen Waddle can thrive at instances over the middle of the field on those types of throws. So I like what Jalen Waddle will provide. Number 19, I'm going to go Tet McMillan. McMillan, the Carolina Panthers' number 1 wide receiver. I think he's only going to get better. I believe, reigning offensive rookie of the year. He has basically all of it except for top end speed. His hands are fantastic. His route running he has the great size, obviously, but his route running at his size, for me, he's probably the best 6'5" or up route runner in the NFL. And I think he's going to continue to have a lot of success as him and Bryce Young get on the same page even more. It seems like at the end of this season, the receivers in the Panthers offense really started to find their role with Jalen Coker and Tet McMillan. And I think bringing in a guy that can clear out a lot of space by just running straight over the top and clearing out a lot of those daggers that McMillan likes to run. I think Chris Brazel II, who they brought in during the offseason, can do a lot of that, can be that guy that just clears the defense, the top of the defense out, and give your intermediate guy, Tet McMillan, a lot more room to work on these sort of dagger concepts. Chris Olave is number 18, had an excellent second half this season, and the chemistry that he had with Tyler Shough was greater than the chemistry he's had with any of the Saints quarterbacks so far since he came into the league in the 2022 season. Number 17 is Jordan Tyson, and he is the final of two rookies that I have in this wide receiver top 32. Jordan Tyson was my favorite wide receiver from the class. Also now on the Saints, I think him and Chris Olave are going to make life very easy for Tyler Shough and are going to be, dual 1,000-yard receivers. Tyson was the best route runner in the draft. I will stand by that, despite some people saying to the contrary that he moves too much. I think every single one of those movements had a purpose to tell in his overarching route storytelling in each game. And I think that is going to play up big at the NFL level. Number 16, I have Davante Adams. He has lost some steps as the elite number one, but as a number two wide receiver with the Rams, he is probably the best number two wide receiver in the league. With Puka Nacua as your number one, he led the league in touchdowns. He's an excellent still red zone guy that can go up and get it. If nothing else, I think if Adams lost all of his speed and route running ability this year, he could still be an 11 catch, 11 touchdown guy. If worse came to worse with a bunch of goal line fades, I still think that he would be dependable in that realm at the very least. I don't think he's lost all of his speed and all of his athleticism, so I think we're going to get a very, very solid Davante Adams season once again. Garrett Wilson is number 15, probably one of the more underrated wide receivers in the NFL. I like Garrett Wilson because he has had terrible quarterbacks throughout his career. You can't call Aaron Rodgers a terrible quarterback, but the production from Aaron Rodgers when he was the starting quarterback of the New York Jets was definitely not what you'd hope for. But it hasn't mattered. Garrett Wilson has been able to put up good numbers, if not top of the league numbers, with whatever quarterback the Jets have had. The Zach Wilsons of the world, all the way down to the Brady Cooks of the world. Having those players throw you the football is kind of like, running with 50-pound barbells attached to each of your legs. Once you take them off, in this instance, once you get Geno Smith, he's going to look a whole lot better. And I think we're going to see Garrett Wilson perhaps even get up higher into this list by the time we do another end of season Grey Duck 250 once the 2026 season concludes. Number 14, Jameson Williams, continuing to get better and better every single year. Untapped potential. Not untapped potential, but just potential out the wazoo. I think he might end up being a better wide receiver than Amon-Ra St. Brown when all is said and done, and that could start to happen this season, but he's got the speed. He doesn't necessarily have the size, but he's got everything else that you'd want. Jameson Williams of the Detroit Lions is number 14, and his teammate Amon-Ra St. Brown is number 13. I like ARSB's ability to uncover himself in zone coverage and to out-leverage cornerbacks on choice routes in man coverage. I think he does an excellent job of that, and just being a security blanket for Jared Goff. I think his ceiling is limited by the archetype of wide receiver that he is, but I think his floor is still higher than almost any other wide receiver's floor in the league. T. Higgins is my number 12. I fawn over T. Higgins all the time. He reminds me of Dez Bryant at his peak. The size, the speed, all of that. And every time I think of him, I think of that touchdown catch in the Super Bowl that he made at the beginning of this second half. And even though he's injured at times, I think that he is a number one wide receiver cosplaying as the number two wide receiver because his teammate just happens to be one of the top wideouts in all of the NFL. T. Higgins gets to benefit from less attention because of all of it that is being put on Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, when he's on the field, does not disappoint. He's number 12 for me. Number 11, Devontae Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles. His role, obviously, now with A.J. Brown gone, is going to be increased. And if you look at the Devontae Smith numbers with A.J. Brown, in games where A.J. Brown did not play, he was the focal point of that offense, and he put up big numbers when he was the number one option. Now that he gets to be that true number one, without anyone standing in his way, the speed plays, the route running ability plays, I think it is going to be a breakout year, even more so for Devontae Smith in 2026. Number 10 is Malik Neighbors, and I think this is his hard floor, is number 10, because of the injury. I think you could put him all the way up into the top 3. I am going to play it a little bit more conservatively and put him at number 10. I think he's going to recover well from his injury, and then he is going to do what we've seen from him when he's been on the field in each of his first 2 seasons. Just be a ridiculous target, be a high volume possession receiver that can get the yards after the catch, and be one of those guys that attacks all 3 levels of a defense. Drake London is number 9. He just got the big extension to make him one of the top paid wide receivers in all the NFL. He is probably another one of my top underrated wide receivers in the league. And that is because his route running is good, and then his contested catch ability is completely out of this world. Michael Penix and Tua Tagovailoa might cap what his production looks like, but I think if you put him into an all else equal sort of situation, he would come in as the one of the top 10 wide receivers in the NFL. Nico Collins is number 8. Now, there is injury concern with Nico Collins that we've seen even in his breakout 2024 campaign. He missed some time with injury. So that does concern me a little bit, but I just cannot get away from him being a size, speed, hands, route running guy. Every phase of the wide receiver game, Nico Collins seems to be excellent at. And he is another guy that could climb this list of one of those big wide receivers that is fast as well. And that's kind of where I am with Nico Collins, Drake London, and then this next guy and the guy after that. Number 7 is George Pickens of the Dallas Cowboys. I think George Pickens showed us a lot last year when he was the focal point of the Cowboys offense. He had some times late in the season where there was a bit of a disappearing act, but when he is on, he is absolutely on, as long as he no longer tries to do that thing where he lunges forward with the ball in one hand, despite not really being near a sideline or near the pylon, just lunges forward and really laxes on the ball security. I want to see a little bit less of that, but otherwise, circus catch guy, George Pickens, fast, size again. And then A.J. Brown within this archetype is probably my top guy, and he comes in at number 6. I think he's going to have a lot of opportunity with New England, and with Drake May throwing him the football, he could put up, I don't want to just repeat what Josh McDaniels said, but he could put up a Gronk-type season for an offense that is primed to take yet another step forward in 2026 with the New England Patriots. Then CeeDee Lamb is my number 5 wide receiver. He's excellent route runner. I think out of my top 5, he is probably the one that I have the faith in the least, but I still really like what he brings to the game. Number 4 is Jackson Smith-Njigba. The reigning offensive player of the year. I want to give him another big year like this before I move him up higher than some of the guys that are ahead of him, whose pedigree I think has earned them the right at this point to be higher. But I don't know if there is a better route runner in the NFL than JSN. And maybe there's some size limitations that you could maybe nitpick about. But right now, I can't put him any, worse than number 4 in the NFL. And who knows? By the end of the season, he could be number 1 if he has another year, especially if he has another year like he did in 2025. Justin Jefferson, I am moving off the throne and moving him down to number 3. He can reclaim this throne, but I think that the top wide receiver in the NFL title has a shelf life of about 3 to 4 years. Not before guys fall off, but before they step down and give way to someone else. It's like a one-term president sort of deal. Jefferson in 2022, probably that is when he solidified himself as the unquestioned number one wide receiver in the NFL. And you can give that to him again in 23, 24, and 25. I think some of the lack of production and some of the missed catches that he had, which were a bit uncharacteristic in 2026, forced me to move him down from number one now to number 3. And Jamar Chase is coming in at number 2, the Bengals' number 1 guy. Much like his former LSU teammate, does everything well. Jamar Chase is better after the catch and has not shown some of the, I don't want to call them issues, but the erosion of the hand talent, the slight erosion of the hand talent that Justin Jefferson showed last year. Jamar Chase has not yet shown that, so I am bumping Chase over Jefferson in the wide receiver rankings, which means our number 1 wide receiver for the 2026 season is Puka Nacua. And this was difficult to move someone above Justin Jefferson for me. As you can tell, a Vikings fan. I think I have to mention that once per show, I guess. But I think Nacua has it all. And I think 2024, his yards per route run was still incredible, even though he missed a lot of that season with an injury. And then this year, he just continued to produce at a high level off of that. So I am excited to see what another full year of Puka Nacua. Granted, some other concerns, obviously, that arose towards the end of last season and have kind of followed him into the off-season might be making this number 1 ranking a bit premature, but if it is pure talent as a wide receiver on the football field, contested catch, route running, just about everything, Puka Nacua is my number 1 player. All right, that is the top 32 of the wide receivers. We will have the next installation of the Grey Duck 250 next Thursday, and then we will also be back with a news-heavy show. I think that's what we're going to do for the rest of the off-season is news-heavy on everything we missed from the weekend from now until Tuesday. Those will be your Tuesday shows, and then we'll do Newslight, anything from Tuesday to Thursday on the Thursday shows, and end those Thursday shows with the next installation of those, excuse me, the next installation of those Grey Duck 250 NFL series. Once again, you can give us a follow or a like over on Twitter, YouTube, or TikTok. We are at Grey Duck Sports on both Twitter and YouTube, and at grey.duck.sports on TikTok. We'll have some clips from this show posted, and I want to know your thoughts on everything. The wide receiver rankings, the Alaric Jackson situation, the Hall of Fame case for Joel Bitonio. Drop them in the comments below, and we will see you next time here on the Grey Duck NFL Show. I'm Josh Kolojeski, signing off and wishing you a good night.